Of course, Jesus has just got through telling them that he's going to go to Jerusalem and going to suffer things from the elders and chief priests and be killed and raised on the third day. And of course, Peter, who is one, it seemed like he always thought it was necessary to say something, said, well, we're not going to allow that to happen. He said, get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me, for you are not setting your mind on God's interest, but man's. Remember that Peter and the disciples and everybody else who was Jewish were looking for the Messiah to be a worldly king, earthly king. And so everybody missed it. And of course, if you just read the old prophecies, it would be tough to think of something otherwise, because that's what they had gotten used to was David and Solomon. They just they were king, both kings, and anybody that tried to jump on them, God allowed them to defeat them, and they just took over what God wanted them to take over, and there's no problems while they were king. Then Jesus said to the disciples, if anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what would it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and will then repay every man according to his deeds. Truly I say to you, there are some of those who are standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Okay, we'll start there in verse 24. It says, if anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Now, I know we've talked about it before, and several of you have seen, and I have too, seen people who are going down the road dragging a cross of some kind. Never anything heavy enough to be hung on. It's always a lightweight. In fact, the one I seen had a tail wheel on the end where it would be easier to drag. That's not what he's trying to say here, is it? What is he trying to say? We all agree that's not what he's trying to say. What is he trying to say? Do what God wants us to do. Jesus didn't want to get on that cross either, did he? In fact, one of the last prayers to require, if it's at all possible, let this pass from me. He surrendered to it, yes. Not my will, but thine be done. And he said, what would it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? We all know people or have seen people who just want to just keep getting more stuff, and if you try to talk to them about God, they have no interest in God whatsoever. They just want to get more stuff. And you stop and you think about, the rich man and Lazarus is a good example. The rich man had all kinds. In fact, the King James Version says he fared sumptuously every day. He had all he wanted. And then there was Lazarus who had nothing. He was sick, he had sores, nothing to eat, and they laid him at the rich man's gates, and they didn't offer to help him, and the dogs come by and licked his sores. But in the end, Lazarus was rewarded, and the rich man had exchanged all of this world for his soul. And he knew he needed to do something else, but it was too late to do anything else. but he'd been concentrating strictly on getting more stuff and living richly. Yes. The rich man Lazarus, I consider it a factual account because he names Lazarus and he says a certain rich man. Most of the time on a proverb or parable, it's just, there was a widow or there was this or that, but there it says there was a certain rich man, and then it names Lazarus. So I already think that it's talking about two individuals that knew each other. Well, maybe not knew each other, but knew their circumstances, because they laid Lazarus at the rich man's gate. So if he went in and out that gate, he might not have known Lazarus, but he knew of his circumstances. He might not have lowered himself to talk to Lazarus. Kind of like, you got homeless people all over the country. Do we stop and talk to them, or we just keep it going? That's kind of, He recognized Lazarus, yeah. See, he says, send Lazarus back. Yeah, I got into a discussion with a fellow of another religion, and he wanted to try to say it was a parable. And I said, no, it's not. If it's a parable, it wouldn't say a certain rich man, and it wouldn't say Lazarus. Whenever they're mentioning certain individuals, definitely, they're just like we may not get there today, but you're farther on in the next chapter where the man has a son who has the epilepsy or a demon or whatever, and that's not a parable. That's a definite man, and that's a definite son that had the demon, and Jesus cures him. What about verse 28, Leland? You're always asking the tough questions. I'll ask you the tough question. It says, truly I say to you, there are some of those who are standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Okay. He's not talking about the end of the world. He's talking about the church coming. Yeah. Well, you're right. Most of them that are there, maybe nearly all of them that are there. Okay. That's the way I perceive it too. But I thought maybe you could explain it better than me. So that's what I ask you. Besides, I'd like to ask you a question, kind of turnaround's fair play, Oh, that's what you'll wait till we get about halfway through the next chapter, and you'll want to back up to chapter 16, I'm sure. But chapter 17. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John, his brother, and led them up on a high mountain by themselves. Now, he didn't take everybody else. He takes Peter and James. Now, Peter's got a brother. Who's his brother? Andrew. What about the rest of them? Doesn't include them in this particular instance, does he? These are maybe the inner circle, okay, yeah. Peter, James, and John. And they go up on a high mountain, it says. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his garments became as white as light. Who else in the scriptures do we find that their face shone like the sun, and he became as white as light, and the people couldn't look upon him? Moses. What did they have to do with Moses? They had to put a deal on over his head, didn't they? They couldn't. He was so bright they couldn't look at him. Here he says he shone like the sun. And said, and behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with him. Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it's good. Here's another place Peter thinks somebody got to say something, so he does. Peter said, look, Lord, it's good for us to be here. If you wish, I will make 3 tabernacles here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. While he was still speaking, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and behold, a voice out of the cloud said, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. I think, Janice, your translation says, hear ye him, doesn't it? Yeah, hear ye him, okay? Now you got Jesus, and you got Moses, and you got Elijah. What's the significance of those 3 individuals? Okay, you got Jesus, got the Christianity coming in effect. Moses represents the law, and Elijah the prophets. And so Peter jumps up and said, Lord, it's good, but we're here. We'll just build 3. If you want us to, we'll build 3 tabernacles, 3 worship tents, if you will. That's what the tabernacle was a place to worship God in the Old Testament. We'll build 3 worship tents, one for you and one for Moses and one for Elijah. And then it says a bright cloud came down, and a voice out of it said, This is my beloved Son, hear him. Jesus, yeah, God's trying to tell Peter, says, get your mind off of Moses and Elijah. Jesus is the one that's important.
That was the reason I asked you on the rich man and Lazarus.
Okay.
Because if that's an actual account of Lazarus and this other guy.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's a whole nother lesson in itself.
Everybody wants to know, will we know people in heaven? Here's the answer to that. If they recognize, and I have no idea how they knew it was Moses, because he didn't have pictures of him.
No. That's the way it seems, Moses. Leland. Well, he's almost old enough to be Moses, but anyway. See, he's closing in on 120. No, it's the way it seems, Leland, is that from what little bit of information we have, is that we will be able to know people we have known and know people, or recognize them, if you will, people we have never known. I got in a whole lot of trouble with a preacher one time when I made that statement, but anyway, I was just a kid, but anyway, that's it.
I think that's correct.
I do too.
Either way, that doesn't affect our salvation.
No, it doesn't affect our salvation, no. And here's another thing is that Somebody have to help me on where it's found at, but it says, it does not yet appear what we shall be, but we know that we shall be like him. It's talking about Jesus. When we get to heaven, it says it doesn't yet, that's not an exact quote, is it? It's getting close though. We don't know exactly what we're going to look like, but we know when we get there, we're going to look like him. And I can't think of where the scripture's at, but anyway.
And what's Moses and Elijah talking to Jesus about?
Does it say? Does it say?
I think it does. I can't recall where.
Doesn't say here. Let me see.
It's not here. That might be next week. I'll check with Reverend Google.
It doesn't have any reference in any of those verses here to another verse in another book. That's all I can. Yes, sir. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of his departure, okay. Okay. There you go, Leland. Luke chapter 9, verse what? Verse 30. So they were talking about his departure. I'm surprised this one didn't have a reference to anywhere too.
Yes, resurrection, etc.
Okay.
In my mind, they're giving him a support talk
Yes.
that he needs to face what's coming.
But what's unique about Elijah though? Now, if they're talking about dying, what's unique about Elijah? Didn't say. It says he didn't die, did it? Said he was caught up in the whirlwind, and Elisha saw him no more. What number? 1 John what? Let's turn to that, because I think I butchered it up pretty bad trying to remember it. Beloved, now we are children of God, and it has not yet appeared as yet what we will be. We know that when he appears, we will be like him, because we will see him just as he is. That's the verse I was trying to think of, and I butchered it up pretty bad. But what does it say? Okay. Yes, sir.
Of course, we know our physical body just becomes overhead. So that's the spiritual body you're talking about.
Yes.
That's what it's supposed to look like.
Okay. Okay.
The verse where it talks about, I don't know where it talks about, but it talks about it, you can't see God because you died, you saw God.
Yes.
And Moses had been in the presence of God, and he shone with the glory of God.
Yeah.
So I would think that when we get to be in the presence of Jesus and God, that we would shine with that same glory
Okay.
as Moses did, maybe.
In fact, I think if you go back now, and I'm thinking about the King James version, but like you say, it says that no man can look on God's face and die, and without dying. It says Moses was allowed to look on God's hinder parts. That's the King James version. In other words, he couldn't look God face to face. He had to look at him from behind. That's the way the King James version reads. Okay, our time's about up. Next week is singing night, I think. We'll start there somewhere, but we didn't go very far in chapter 17. One thing I want to bring out is that, it's not about this, it's a whole new deal, is that, we think, well, I've read this book before, and I've read this book before, so I don't need to read it again, And every time we go through the Bible, sometimes we'll pick out something
God showed something new.
new. Huh? Something that stands out. Recently, I've been reading in Psalms. Did you ever hear about angel food? Read chapter 78, verse 25, I believe it is. It talks about God fed the Israelites angel food. That just jumped out at me, You've had the cake? Huh? You had the quail? Called it angel food. If I check me real quick on that, it's been a few days since yeah. You ate the food of angels. So you never know what that really don't make a whole lot of difference. But 25, Psalms chapter 78, verse 25. But it just proved to me is that you can't read it too much because there's something you missed the first time or the second time or the third time. And sometimes it's something that's really important that we missed or misunderstood.
And the same verse sometimes can give you a different meaning for a different situation.
Yeah. So that you need to know. And a lot of times if we know the history of the area at the time it was written, that helps a whole bunch too. Well, that's what he's talking about,